A final look back at the Buccaneers 2-0 start before turning the page to the Eagles matchup in prime time. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
Your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this WTSP Wednesday episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener review every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is Evan Klosky at eKlosky WTSP, credentialed members of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm the deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. Evan is on 10 Tampa Bay and on 10TampaBay.com. Locked On Bucs is here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, we want to share our appreciation of your continued support of the show. Again, I'm going to apologize in advance. Still can't breathe through my nose. Still have the sore throat. So I apologize if I sound a little winded when trying to talk because I only have one way to take in oxygen, and it's the same thing I'm using to spew out mouth words. So apologies in advance. But
where I come through.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Laying out a road to victory and giving some predictions coming up in a little bit. But first, let's put a bow on the Bucs' performance in their home opener. I gave some of my thoughts on the immediate live reaction episode. David was back on yesterday's show, and he gave some reaction. But, Evan, another week, another dub. Bucs fans should definitely be happy about the early season success. But what is your biggest takeaway from the win over the Chicago Bears, other than the fact that Justin Fields is indeed terrible?
Well, here's something I want to ask you. What do you think about the Chicago Bears? What do you think about that team?
I think they're a long ways from contending.
Okay. So we agree, right? Not a good team?
Yeah, not so much.
Okay. So then
they're the NFC North's version of the Carolina Panthers.
So
Bryce and Justin Fields are the same person, and protection isn't great. Defense, some decent players on the defensive side of the ball, but overall, it's not a great football team.
So I ask you that because I think we're all in agreement that it's probably not good that it was a 20-17 game with the Bears having the ball with a chance to go down the field, tie it late, or in fact win it. Now, it didn't happen. Shaquille Barrett makes a tremendous play thanks to the Bears running the same exact play 3 consecutive times, which Levante David laughed at after the game. So while there were a lot of good things, and the fact that they won ugly is usually a sign of a team being good, right? Like if you can win badly, that's a good sign. But 1 of 4 in the red zone is not good enough. The getting a field goal blocked can't be happening. 7 penalties can't be happening. As far as positives are concerned, 120 rushing yards, I believe. 120. Just confirming that. When is the last time we were this happy with the rushing attack? And I would probably say Germany. It's been a long time since we watched them run the ball effectively. They committed to it. It was great. That's a huge positive to take away. Baker Mayfield threw for more than 300 yards. 171 of those yards came via Mike Evans and his yards after catch as well. So he really stepped up in a game that was a favorable matchup for him. And credit to Dave Canales, Baker Mayfield and company for finding him and making him putting him in positions to succeed, I should say. Baker Mayfield was composed and fantastic again. Forget about the stats for a second. Something that stood out to me, it stood out to Mike Evans after the game. Him jumping on the fumble. Mike Evans said, quarterbacks usually do not do that. Quarterbacks don't like to put themselves in harm's way. Now, that fumble recovery on the very next play led to the Mike Evans touchdown. Little plays like that go a long way. Baker Mayfield should have been sacked like 3 or 4 times in that game and wiggled himself out of it somehow, did this wacky sidearm pass. It was only for like 3 yards, but he's getting that swagger back into his game. The things that flashed coming, when he was at Oklahoma, things that flashed early, or I should say maybe that 2021 season in Cleveland to an extent. But he's taking care of the football. He's making smart decisions. And while maybe he's being a little bit too conservative, I rather that than being too aggressive. Because back-to-back weeks, we have learned that turnovers have beaten the other team, and turnovers have directly won the game for Tampa Bay. And 2 turnovers again, 6 sacks. I thought that was phenomenal. I think Justin Fields helped them a little bit. But for a group that didn't have Kalijah Kancey up front, being able to create those pressures and get home, you love to see that. And Zion McCollum, actually, I thought did a pretty good job.
He had a better day than Jamel Dean.
I'll tell you this: Jamel Dean has been a ghost for 2 weeks now.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
I don't know what's going on with him, but he'll get exposed against the Eagles if he doesn't, wake up, because he's not getting paid to be just some guy on the field, right? He's not getting paid to be average or slightly below average, slightly above average. He's getting paid to be a dog. So he better show up and prove that he deserved that contract he got in the offseason, because the Bucs do not have any wiggle room for some guy to not live up to expectations and standards with the salary cap that they have. Okay. The depth is thin. So while, again, for me, headline is one ugly, good sign. But let's not run away with the fact that, even though they had 437 yards of total offense, there were a lot of things to be cleaned up. So that's good. Mike Evans said they won ugly 2 weeks in a row. That's okay. They're still learning the offense. They're still figuring things out. So as long as you're learning from victories and not losses, those are good things to have.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look real quick before we hit the break. In week 1, it was ugly. It was a slow start, and they were awful on third down. Then you move to week 2. Okay, third downs improved immensely. Now it's the red zone offense that struggled. So you kind of hope that you see that step that they took from week 1 to week 2 in terms of third down and apply that to the red zone offense, where you see a vast improvement in that part of the offense. It's like we've talked about, you and I have talked about it, David and I have talked about it numerous times. There's a lot of learning curves going on right now between Baker and the offensive line and this offense in general, and Dave Canales as a play caller. And like you said, as long as they're continuing to learn off of wins, that's better than learning from losses. But we do need to see that improvement for sure coming up. But Evan, it is time to get into the week 3 prime time showdown between the Bucs and the Eagles, and laying out the recipe for a Tampa Bay upset. That's next on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Player of the Week. Eagles wide receiver A.J. Brown is looking for his first touchdown and 100-yard game of the season going into week 3 against the Buccaneers, but he has a great chance to accomplish both after combining for 11 catches on 16 targets for 108 yards in the first 2 games. The Buccaneers have struggled with number one wideouts early, and their run defense will make Jalen Hurts throw more as the squeaky wheel. Expect Brown to get plenty of grease on Monday night. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Everydayers, be sure to come back tomorrow as I will be joined by Gino Camarelli and Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles.
Ooh.
And just like the NFL preview shows, it does not matter that I'm outnumbered. I will be educating people on that show. So, through 2 weeks, the Buccaneers have the third highest graded quarterback in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. If you are not a PFF guy, how about a quarterback that is top 10 in completion percentage and completions of 20 plus yards, top 5 in passer rating, hit the fewest times of any quarterback, and only sacked once? They also have the NFL's fourth leading receiver, who is also top 3 in 20 plus yard receptions. Top 10 in yards after catch, and tied for second in touchdown receptions. How about a team that is second only to the Dallas Cowboys in turnover differential, second in the NFL against the run, 9th in points allowed? Raise your hand if this is how you saw the season starting out. There's not a lot of hands going up. No.
I called a 2-0 start. I predicted the Buccaneers to win week 1. I predicted the Buccaneers to win week 2. Ipso facto.
Well, yeah, so did I, but I also didn't think that they were going to be.
Yeah, but you have the Buccaneers going 13 and 13-14 wins.
No, I think I had them at like 9-7 or 10-6 when we went through. I had them at 10-6, and I did not
come prediction time. It's gonna be like, well, I guess I'm going with the Bucs.
We'll see. It depends on how well you do in this segment right here, because there's no question this is the Bucs' toughest test up to this point. Might be their toughest test all season long. So what is the blueprint for a Buccaneers victory and an upset of the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think the blueprint is no turnovers again, something that they have stressed, right? They got a little lucky in Chicago too, because I think both teams fumbled a couple of times and recovered their own fumbles. But the ball hit the ground. You cannot beat the Eagles beating yourself. So you have to kind of harken back to at least the discipline that you had in Minnesota. 3 penalties, no turnovers, and then getting a couple yourself. So you have to just not beat yourself. And that seems very cliche and dumb, but the truth is there's zero margin for error against a caliber of opponent like this. So Baker's going to have to not risk it for the biscuit. Having said that, the secondary for the Eagles is a little banged up. And when it comes to the Eagles' strength, the defensive line is pretty good. I'm a little worried about what's going to happen to Robert Hainsey there, staring down the barrel of a couple of big boys on that D line. I'm a little concerned about how the Bucs, if they don't have Kalijah Kancey, are going to handle the big boys up front for the Eagles, who have probably the best offensive line in the National Football League, right? I mean, they are just built different in the trenches. So you have to find ways to have success in this offense where you want to run the ball consistently, but you are not going to wear down a team like the Eagles in the trenches. That might work against the heavy majority of NFL teams, that will not work against the Eagles. If you keep running the ball, they might keep stopping you for 2 yards and 2 yards and 2 yards. And the fourth quarter will come and it'll be another 2 and another 2. They're built like that. So as far as play calls are concerned, I think you got to lean a little bit more on the passing game. You've built up at least some good credibility in the first couple of games to prove to teams you want to run the ball. Whatever tricks you got up your sleeve, you're probably going to need it, because you're going to have to really ask Godwin and Evans to carry you in this game. And you're going to have to hope that the offensive line can hold up long enough so that Baker doesn't get crushed back there, because there's still some question marks with that line and Malk and Filer and Gedecke's been probably better than expected in my opinion. Hainsey maybe average. So yeah, the blueprint's tough. I'll tell you that. Like, you got to play a near flawless football game, I think.
Yeah, and they've done a good job not turning the ball over. That I think it was his first or second pass against the Bears, really dangerous pass, nearly intercepted against Chicago. But I go back to kind of what you were saying. You can't beat yourself. And last week against the Chicago Bears, 6 penalties on offense can't happen. 2 of them happened on third downs and negated first down plays. Absolutely cannot have that. They need to have a penalty game like they did against the Minnesota Vikings, where I think they had 3 for 15 or 3 for 20.
And there were no pre-snap penalties either.
Yeah, it was a really, really clean game from that aspect. So yeah, I agree 100%. And then the other thing, and I'll be interested to hear your take on this real quick. Where was Devin White on Sunday? That you have to have Minnesota Viking Devin White against the Philadelphia Eagles. You can't have this 2-tackle, completely disappeared, made absolutely no splash plays, was not talked about one time, Devin White that we saw against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, and I have to look back at the tape, which admittedly I usually have done to this point, but because of the Rays announcement, my film study is going to go into tonight. But having said that, it might have been game plan. They were generating enough pressure really without White. And I'll say that while I didn't necessarily recognize White out there, I also didn't really think that White was blowing things either. Maybe we can put him into the category of just being a guy. But I agree with someone like Jalen Hurts, who, in 2021, the Eagles were a different team. But Todd Bowles was the defensive coordinator back then. They had a good game plan. They limited him. Having Levante and Devin as your linebackers will treat you well. But Jalen Hurts is way, way improved from what they saw a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it almost needs to be like the old school Bucs where you had Derek Brooks spying Michael Vick all game long just to kind of eliminate that threat. So it'll be interesting to see what Todd Bowles dials up against the Eagles this week. But it's time for the weekly predictions. Who is going to be Evan's player of the game and who wins on Monday night? That is coming up in just a moment here on Locked On Bucs. Prize Picks is really simple to play, and I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. And now, Prize Picks offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. I have not set my picks for this week yet, but I'm looking really, really hard at taking Mike Evans to have more than 58.5 receiving yards and for Jalen Hurts to have less than 40.5 rushing yards. If you think you can do better than I do, Go to PricePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to PricePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Wrapping things up here on a WTSP Wednesday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. James Yarcho, Evan Klosky. It is prediction time. So let's start off. Let's see. Last week, who was your player of the game? I can't even remember this point.
Wasn't it it was someone on the defensive side of the ball, wasn't it?
It might have been Devin.
It was no.
Or was it Vita? But I do know you were,
I think it was Vita. You know what it was? Actually, I think it was Devin. Oh wait. I think it was Devin.
But your bold prediction was real close to coming true. Because I do believe it was what? 4 takeaways? 3 takeaways?
3 takeaways. It was gonna be 3 again.
Okay, that's exactly what it was. So
and then I had my final score was 19-17. I had the Bears score right.
Yeah, I had the margin of victory right because I went 20-10. David went 23-10, but you've been pretty close on your bold predictions.
I've been peppering. I needed to. The sad part is I needed to flip them because week 1 I had Tryon-Shoyinka, week 2 I had Devin. I needed to flip those.
Yep, that's exactly what it. What a game by Joe Tryon-Shoyinka against the Bears. But
now can he do it again?
Let's talk about the Eagles. Well, I don't know. Is that going to be your bold here? What is your bold prediction for the Monday night game against the Eagles?
My bold prediction is the Eagles will rush for less than 65 yards.
Woo!
So I think that
Evan Klosky just said absolutely nobody is scared of DeAndre Swift. Those are the words.
I think, I don't know what the heck. Thursday night football is weird. Weird things happen. You have really tough spot for the Vikings going on the road, having a game plan. I think Flores, to an extent, copy and pasted his defensive game plan. And it's what he does, but. They just got bullied and were ill prepared for some of those things. I think with what Bowles kind of preaches and teaches and the emphasis on stopping the run, that they'll do that job. I have way more worries about the Bucs getting exploited with deep digs, seams, go routes. I believe it's a game plan that the Eagles will actually just go bombs away on them because why play into their strength? And again, we don't even know what Carlton Davis's status is going to be. Bowles told us too early to tell. We won't really know or have a sniff of it until Thursday. But if it's truly a turf toe situation, I mean, this is going to linger. So I would imagine that Monday, if it is a turf toe, which is what we were told, some sort of a turf toe, then I mean, Carlton probably has another couple of weeks out. But again, we really don't know. So pure speculation. But that's my concern. Not necessarily with how they're going to stuff the run. It's going to be how do they prevent the deep passes. So that's my bold prediction.
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be difficult enough to slow down A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith with Carlton and a Jamel Dean on top of his game with the way Jamel Dean has been playing. And you throw out Zion McCollum, it could get real ugly real fast. But stranger things have happened. So, that's why they play the game. But, Evan, who's your predictive player of the game?
My player of the game, and I'm hoping that this is not illegal anymore. It was very much illegal during the Tom Brady days. My player of the game is going to be Baker Mayfield.
It is not illegal now that the GOAT is gone. You're allowed to select a quarterback.
So it's going to be Baker Mayfield. I think everything has been building for this moment on a national stage for him to shine. do sort of the things that we have been seeing, avoiding the sack and scrambling, the gritty stuff. He's going to come to play. And as I said, with the Eagles hurting in their secondary, I feel like this is a great opportunity for the team to push the ball as well and kind of test that pass game to really stress it and to lean on it a little bit more than maybe they would normally do. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a Baker Mayfield respect element. I don't think the game's going to go perfect, and you're going to see with my score. But I think when you watch Baker play and his stats, I think it will all make sense.
All right. Well, what is that score prediction?
My score prediction is going to be Philadelphia 27, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 20.
Okay.
I just I don't the spread on this game is 5.5. I kind of lean that the Eagles are probably better than that. I'm still a little bit concerned about the Bucs not being 100% in sync.
Sure.
If they don't force the turnovers, I don't think they can win. They need help, and they've needed help the past couple of days or the last couple of games with those turnovers. And turnover luck is a fickle thing. Sometimes it's falling in your favor, sometimes it's not. And I just think ignoring kind of variables that are tough to predict, objectively speaking, the Eagles are a better team. I think the Buccaneers are going to come out firing. I think they're going to be jacked up. They're 2-0, Monday Night Football. Rondé Barber getting his ring at halftime. There's a lot of things to really embrace about this experience and playing with your hair on fire. But there are going to be chunk plays. Explosives are going to happen for the Eagles. And I think ultimately the Eagles are going to have more explosives than the Bucs. And while the Bucs might be able to eat at some time, I'm afraid they might settle for a field goal or two more than what they need. And I think we're going to walk away from that game of the Bucs played pretty darn good, but I think you understand the margin of error and where it has to be to be a true playoff type contender.
Yeah, I don't think you're too far off there. Real quick, first and foremost, can Rondé suit up and help out the secondary against the Eagles?
He's built for it.
He is built for it. And also, it was reported throughout Tuesday that the Buccaneers are potentially making some inquiries regarding a certain running back named Cam Akers there in Los Angeles. What do you think? Is that serious, or do you think it's just kind of chatter right now, or maybe are they looking to replace Chase Edmonds and that injury might be a little more severe than we think?
Well, the Edmonds thing looks like it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks, and Akers would certainly help them. I would say if they sign Akers, that has to mark the end for Keyshawn Vaughn.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what they're weighing. Do they want to take on Akers? Is that an improvement for when Chase Edmonds does come back? And then essentially you're moving Sean Tucker down to the number 3 job. Because Edmonds is kind of, I don't really put him as like a number 2. I put him in a very defined role. Yeah. He's someone who's going to take a couple of rushes and play on third downs and whatnot. So, it's tough. And not to mention you have a bye week coming up. So that 4 to 6 week injury is really more of a 3 to 5 game sort of deal.
Also gives the Bucs a little extra time to get Akers caught up on the offense. If you would think that the problem is if they suffer another injury in White or Tucker, did they just pass on an opportunity to get someone who's very viable to fill in? Because now the depth is thin. I can't imagine Keyshawn Vaughn
is getting himself out of the doghouse anytime soon. So he's not a viable option more than maybe 1 week. So I think that's what it comes down to of, do we want Akers, and is that too much? Or, and we just deal with it, which is a good problem to have when Edmonds comes back, or do we pass and we just say, you know what, White, Tucker, it's your duo to figure out, and let's see what you got.
Well, I mean, the Bucs could use him. The Rams really haven't wanted him going back to last year. I say 2025 7th and Vaughn for Akers. Who says no?
Yeah, to me, it's just let him release him. I don't even think you have to give up a 7th. In my opinion, I wouldn't give up a 7th for Cam Akers. I know you don't want him.
Right.
So I'm not going to be the one that gives you any sort of compensation for that.
But a 7th 2 years from now means that you got him, and you don't have to compete with anybody else for him.
I would do a pick swap.
Or that. I would do a
7th round pick swap. That I'll do. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm not. I know it seems silly to quibble over a 7th rounder, but those are kind of for Jason Light special team picks.
Yeah,
flyer picks. I don't think he has a long, illustrious history of hitting on these 7th rounders for the most part, but not far off was a Trey Palmer who we're liking. So you just never know. And exactly. I would like to keep that in my scouting department and trust them versus going after a guy who you have no leverage. So pick swap, at least keep, whatever, you're going to get the better of the 7th round picks. I'm cool with that. And let's ride.
All right. Well, definitely something to keep an eye on, but that is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Make sure you are coming back tomorrow for Crossover Thursday when I am joined by the Locked On Eagles guys. That's right. Yeah, once again, I'm outnumbered, but so far I seem to be the right one out of that NFC South preview episode. Can't wait to talk to Ross Jackson in the
double boo.
Double boo. But yeah, make sure you're coming back tomorrow for Crossover Thursday when we take a deeper dive into the Bucs and Eagles game. We want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every single day. Make sure you are checking out everything that Evan is doing on 10 Tampa Bay and at 10tampabay.com. Check out my work over at bucksnation.com. And of course, follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at eKlosky WTSP. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.